On today's Patriot Nation podcast, we are going to be doing a little post-mortem on the Patriots this year, how they did, little reaction, obviously, to the game on Saturday night, which was an absolute disaster. And we'll kind of get into a little bit about what we think they need moving forward. We'll also take a look back at what we projected for the preseason before the season started and how we did on those. It's just Pat and Keegan today, but it's a heck of a show, so buckle up and cue the music. Keegan, here we are, season over once again, early January. Not great. That was one of the worst performances I've ever seen, certainly from the Patriots, and maybe from any team in any round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it was tough. I do think it helps a little bit that every game in the wild card round, with the exception of one or two, was a blowout. Like teams just, they looked like 7 seeds and 6 seeds, that didn't really belong. So that helps a little bit. It doesn't sting as bad when you're watching them get blown out by 40 or 30 points, whatever it was. So
that's very true.
Certainly in my lifetime, I think that's probably their most uninspired game they've ever played. They've had worse losses. They've lost to worse teams. Like the Bills are, I think, the favorite in the AFC. But the most uninspiring, just throwing a bunch of guys out there and seeing what happens kind of game that I remember watching.
Hey, Spin Zone, Mac Jones looked better than Kyler Murray. So
Facts.
He's got that going for him, I guess. That game was, Jesus Christ, that's one of the worst games I've ever seen. But yeah, the Patriots just defensively, I think, and I think it was obvious from Jump Street that they just did not have the horses. And Josh Allen, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Josh Allen. Josh Allen now for the second consecutive time playing the Patriots looked fantastic. Looked like the best player on the field on either team.
4 out of the last 5, he's looked unbelievable.
Yeah, and he
both games last year. Yep.
Yeah, and that's really the thing. Like he was outrageous, and he made some great plays. But the Patriots defense, no speed, no athleticism, no answer for him whatsoever anywhere on the field. Kyle Duggar's hurt, Barmore was banged up a little bit, and he's really an interior defensive lineman. There's really not much Christian Barmore can do to stop Josh Allen. I pray to God. I pray to God that we find out that Matthew Judon had an injury or something, because I don't know what the hell happened to him, but he was a different player after the bye. And I know he had COVID somewhere in there. Like maybe was it COVID? I don't know, but like
it was immediately after the bye. He had COVID. He missed the first week of practice after.
Right. So he went from arguably the best player on the team. He looked like the best player on the team to like where Donovan Mitchell's calling him out, like calling him red shirt, red sleeves, and like talking about how he's this like unbelievable player, to like he had like 1 pressure his last 5 games. I mean, he was atrocious. And not only was he bad, but in the first Bills matchup, well, the second Bills matchup, I guess, the first home Bills matchup, he couldn't even keep contained. He was a liability on the field more than he helped. So another non-factor from him. So again, I'm hoping that it was something, some sort of injury related thing or something, but man, it was ugly towards the end with him.
Yeah. I struggle picking him out. I mean, obviously everybody has, and rightfully so. You can't have 12 all-pro weeks and then, 7 of the worst weeks of football that we've seen this year. Really. He wasn't good for 2 months, really down the stretch. So, but I struggle picking him out because it's like, Devin McCourty was bad in the last game of the last 2 games of the regular season and the playoff game. He wasn't good. The linebackers are just old and slow and not that they're not able to overcome the things that they were able to overcome, just 2 years ago in 2019, where they were always slower and less athletic than everybody else, but they were able to overcome that because they were so aggressive and so smart and they were always in the right place. That just wasn't the case this year. So I think defensively as a whole, disgusting last 6 weeks. They fell off a cliff, man. They were bad. And offensively, they from Jump Street, they did not have the horses to compete in games that would require them to score, 2-3 touchdowns in a row and get on a roll and be able to get into a shootout with teams. They just didn't have it. So I think we all knew that they weren't a Super Bowl contender. That was unrealistic, but to see that they didn't even belong in the playoffs really was disappointing, I would say, after that 7-week stretch we had where they looked great and then they just they showed that they didn't really belong this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and people go back and say, well, they didn't play anyone in that 7-game stretch. And I mean, you're right. They didn't play anyone. Now, they played the number 1 seed in the AFC, but without Derrick Henry, without A.J. Brown, without Julio Jones, that was a totally different, Tennessee Titans team than the one that you're going to see this weekend. So
right.
I just think, they didn't play anyone, but they didn't play that way against any other team. The Colts didn't make the playoffs either. Neither did the Dolphins. Those two teams both didn't make the playoffs. They both aren't great teams. And the Patriots played like crap against both of those teams.
Got wrecked.
Right. They really did. And they made it close at the end. And the Hightower stuff, listen, I love Hightower, even though he still has me blocked on Twitter. I love Dante Hightower. He's been one of the cornerstones of the 3 Super Bowls. And you can make an argument that they don't win any of those 3 Super Bowls without Dante Hightower. And specifically with his, with the plays that he's made, you don't win, right? He was arguably probably should have won MVP in Super Bowl 53. But either way, he's old and slow. He just is. I mean, you can see it. He's a half a step late getting places. He knows where he needs to be, obviously, because he's Hightower and he's been around forever and he's a smart player. Right. But the Jonathan Taylor touchdown, he was there, but he was late. If he gets there on time, he makes the tackle in the hole, and it's 3rd and 6, and the Patriots get the ball back and maybe win. And instead he's late getting there. Taylor cuts back. McCourty takes a terrible angle on it. And, they give up a long touchdown. And so, that's the type of stuff where it's like you need that athleticism, right? And you even saw it in the Dolphins game as well. And, that's why the RPO worked against them, because they don't have any athletic guys. So, yeah, you run the RPO. It's like, okay, I wonder if it's going to be a run or a pass. Oh, crap. Now it's either a run or a pass, and I have to get back to where I was supposed to be. They don't have the athleticism to do that. And so that's the challenge for this team, is to get better and faster and younger defensively while still holding on to some of those cornerstones. You talk about McCourty and Hightower are like 2 of the biggest leaders in the locker room. If they both leave, now you have a huge void of voices that were leading you, to where you wanted to go. And Belichick values that so much. And yes, there are guys that will take over for that a little bit, but you can't just replace those guys and be like, oh yeah, that'll be fine. We'll figure it out, from a leadership perspective. That's a dangerous game, in my opinion.
Yeah. McCourty, I just kind of shat all over him a second ago, saying that he was bad down the stretch, but that's not a guy that you want to move on for. That's not it's time. You've got to move forward. I don't think you can. You
don't have anyone else.
You definitely can't move on from both of them, right? Just not just leadership, but communication on the field. Those are the 2 guys who have done it for the past decade. And Juwan Bentley, the other guy who stepped in and done it, he's a free agent. So that's a huge factor that goes into it too. So trying to find a way, this is just me racking my brain right now, but veteran rest days and stuff like that. Maybe let's not throw Hightower out there every single day at practice on probably 2 bad knees, a shoulder that's been reconstructed 3 or 4 times. There are some changes that need to be made, not just to the roster, but to the way they do things leading up to the year and throughout the year, especially with this extra 17th game. If you're not going to be one of the top seed, you're playing in the wild card round, which we never saw really them do in the past 20 years. So you're basically adding 2 games to the schedule if you want to go out and win a Super Bowl.
It's the first time Bill Belichick has ever started the playoffs on the road in his coaching career, which is pretty wild when you think about it. But it's the first time he's ever started on the road in his post-game career. That's outrageous. For a guy to have coached for, 26 years or however long it was, for him to have never done that is pretty crazy.
And trotting, 21, 22-year-olds out there for 21 games is a lot to ask. Never mind the guys in their mid-30s,
Correct.
So there are definitely some changes that need to be made, and there obviously will be. We see it every year. Some leader and Patriot fan favorite always ends up leaving, right? But I think this year we're probably going to see a couple extra more than we did. We haven't even mentioned, Matthew Slater and James White, who are free agents, like McCourty. Lot of moves.
Like everyone's a free agent. Yeah, it seems like everyone's a free agent, and really, there's a lot of decisions to be made, across the football. And the other part of it is that they don't have a ton of cap space. They just don't have a ton of cap room because of the guys that they signed. You look back at that Aguilar, signing, and you just say, man, that one really sucked. And we harped on it at the beginning I know you didn't like it. I know Spags didn't like it. I was kind of like, oh, well, let's see if he can play. Looked like no, he can't. And so now you got a guy in the X who's getting paid $14 million this year against the cap who really can't play. And,
everybody's brought up the fact that he stretches the field, which is true, that they were a better offense with him on the field. He just doesn't produce. And you don't pay a guy $11 million to stretch the field and help others get open. You pay somebody $11 million, you want production. That's
correct.
Brandon Cooks is the kind of guy you pay $11 million to go out there and be your number one receiver in this kind of offense, right? Not a Nelson Aguilar. So as much as people like to give him credit, which he deserves for making the team better by being on it, it doesn't mean he's worth the contract that he signed and that they ended up giving. I mean, $22 million for that guy is just so much money. And that, like you said, that's one of the things where you have to finagle yourself around that. And the cap, as we all know, they can do some things with the cap, but I think the big thing is they have to see some steps up from people that you either didn't see this year or they didn't get an opportunity. Rayquan Mcmillan missed the year with an ACL.
Yep.
Cam McGrone missed the year with an ACL. Ronnie Perkins never played. He was never able to slot himself into the lineup, whether it's an issue where he didn't learn the defense fast enough or they didn't really find a role for him that they felt comfortable putting him in. Tons of guys that are going to be on the team next year.
Josh Uche is a big one on that list. He's got that. He's got tons of athleticism. That's what the defense needs, and he's not even on the field, right? He played 4 snaps, and 2 of them were the kneel downs. I mean, it's just
they can't find a way to get him on the field and trust him, which I understand. He's been bad against the run, but when the one thing you need is athleticism, and he's the second most athletic player you have on defense,
right?
Figure it out. Like,
and
that's a coaching thing.
That's 100. That's what I was gonna say. That's a coaching thing too, where somebody in the room needs to push Bill and say, "Listen, Bill, I get it. I know you want reliable players. I know you want the safe, reliable guys. That's what we want. That's what we've won with for 20 years here. I get it. The NFL's changing, man. The NFL's changing. We need those fast, athletic guys. So Josh Uche might suck against the run. You might be able to run right at him. Yep, you can do that. But if Josh Allen's running, he can get after the quarterback and he can chase him down in the pocket, and we can put him as a spy on Josh Allen, and he can slow him down. He's not going to beat him. He's not going to dominate him or anything like that, but he can at least stay with him competitively, and that's what we need, right? And so, like, to me, that's one of those situations where someone needs to step up and say, and this is part of the problem where it's like, and everyone talks about, oh, well, but when these guys have all been groomed in the Patriot system, they've just worked for Belichick their whole life. So Bill says, hey, it works this way. And they feel that way too. They're like, hey, I feel this way too. The guy needs to be reliable. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, we need the athleticism. I mean, you see, you're gonna have to sacrifice some of that veteran leadership and knowledge for athleticism and hope that those guys can grow into the athleticism, because against too many teams, it's not enough. Yes, you can beat the Chargers with that because the Chargers are dumb and they do stupid things. And so, yes, they're more athletic than you, and they probably have more talent than you, but they're stupid, so they do stupid things. And so you can overcome that. But the Bills are a well-coached team that are better than you and more athletic than you. You need athletic guys on the field. So get those old, slow guys at the field and put those fast, young guys on the field and see what happens. And I think that's, I think ultimately that's what we're going to have to do, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, like I said, changes are coming, and they're going to be sweeping changes. It's not going to be like tinkering with a thing here or there.
Right.
Lots of changes coming, definitely.
Someone said also, Patriots paid a ton of money to those 2 tight ends, and they played, I think, the 31st amount of 12 personnel in the entire league.
Yep.
And they just didn't put them on the field at the same time. And Jonnu Smith had a terrible year. I don't know if he didn't learn the offense. We've talked about this a lot, about how whether he didn't know what he was doing or they weren't comfortable with him running routes. But like, you got to figure that out, man, because you paid a lot of money to these 2 guys. And Jonnu Smith, not only did you pay him a lot of money, but he's a weapon, a potential weapon in the passing game. He's got some real athleticism and some real ability after the catch. Get him the damn football, right? Put him on the field, get him the ball, and see what happens. I mean, that's what you want to try to do in this offense.
I mean, Phil talked about it when we had him on. He really didn't practice until the start of training camp.
Right.
Didn't show up to OTA or voluntary workouts, got hurt in OTAs. He really kind of started ramping it up at the first preseason game when they were finding roles for players.
Right.
And that's when he was starting to learn the offense. So I definitely think that had something to do with it. Yeah,
for sure.
that was one. And then we saw with Hunter Henry, he was able to kind of take off, and it was like we're used to having one tight end that we throw out there, and so let's just do what we're used to. And they kind of got stuck that way. I'd say halfway through the year, that Falcons game, after that, it was no more Jonnu and Henry. It was all Hunter Henry.
Just all Henry. Yeah, you're right. 9 touchdowns this year. He had a pretty good year.
He
year.
did.
So
we'll talk about that soon.
I was going to say, speaking of that, do you want to go over that right now? And then I do want to talk. Listen, just for the listeners out there, just so you guys know, we are going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back around the Super Bowl, whether it's before or after the Super Bowl. We're going to come back somewhere around the Super Bowl, and we're going to dive headfirst into draft stuff. Keegan and Spags are already in it. I'm going to get into it as well, and start really looking hard at who's coming out, at who's going to be available, at what the Patriots should do. So we'll talk a little bit about that today, but we'll be jumping into that in a few weeks. But I do want to take a look at, we did make some preseason predictions as to what they would do in the regular season, just numbers wise. And so let's take a look back and kind of see where we were and how we felt about some of those numbers. You got them in front of you, right, Keegan?
Yeah, so we started with Damian Harris rush yards. It was over under 1,100. That was a calculation of how many games he played last year and what his pace was, and then I think we added 100. His pace would have been 1,000 last year. We added 100. A little bit disappointing, I'd say.
I said over. I said over, did I not?
You did. So did Spags. I said under. He had 929, so he was like 7, whatever, 170 away.
He also missed. How many games did he miss? 3 games?
2. I believe it was 2.
2 games. Okay.
So, and that's a guy, he's not going to play every game because he's a bell cow and he's going to get banged up, So I think I factored that into it as well. And I remember saying Ramondre Stevenson's the same kind of guy. So if he does get hurt, then they're going to plug him in and kind of try to roll that way, which I was right about. Congrats to me.
I have to say, here's what I will say, though. I predicted before the season about Damian Harris, I predicted 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. And so he did not get 1,200 yards, obviously, but he ended up with 15 touchdowns. So fantasy-wise, at least, the production was pretty close to the same just because the touchdown numbers were so high.
Yeah, so the next one was, we were all looking at Josh Uche to take a step. So it was over under 4.5 sacks for Uche. He only had 1 in 2020. He had 3, which was surprising to me looking back.
What?
I thought it was going to be 2 because I remember he had a 2-sack game, but he had 3. All of them came within the first 4 weeks. He didn't have a sack for the rest of the season. I said under. Spag said under. You said over. So that was a loss for you.
Yep.
Mac Jones passing yards. Me and Spags both said under 3,500. He had 3,801, and you said over. So
yes, I did.
You got that one. Who leads the team in touchdown receptions? Can you remember who you said was going to lead the team in touchdowns?
Oh, my God. I probably said Jonnu Smith.
You said Hunter Henry. Spags said Jonnu Smith. I said Nelson Aguilar. You were right with Hunter Henry.
How about that one?
That's a dub. Who will catch Mac Jones' first touchdown? Do you remember who you said, and do you remember who actually caught it?
I know it was Nelson Aguilar. There's almost a 0% chance I said Nelson Aguilar. I'm going to say I probably said Jonnu Smith.
You did say Jonnu.
Okay.
I said James White, which is very sad because he came very close.
Sad.
He was tackled at the 2-yard line.
He was. You're right.
And Jacoby Myers was Spags' answer.
Oh, that would have been so awesome.
Tough. Only had 1 all year. This next one's sad for me. Who will lead the team in interceptions? You guys both said J.C. Jackson. You were both correct. I said Devin McCourty, who came in 4th place with 3 interceptions. Man. Tough. I don't know how anybody could say anybody other than J.C. Jackson if he's on the team, but
well, I mean, listen, you were trying to be different. That's all. You're trying to be different. Oh, Matt's right. Jacoby did have 1 from Hoyer at the end of the year.
Did he?
His
first one was from Hoyer.
Right. The first one was from Hoyer. The second one was in the Jacksonville game, the blowout. Yep.
So that was all the individual stuff we did. I had 2 correct and 4 wrong. Spags had the same. You had 3 correct and 3 wrong. So you won.
Look at this. Look at this guy.
And then
Prognosticator Pat.
That's right. We all said for the preseason record prediction 11-6. They were 10-7. You said missed the playoffs.
I thought the AFC would be significantly better than it was.
Yes. Me and Spags had to lose in the divisional round, so we were all wrong.
Yeah.
Playoffs wise, and we were a game off.
Yeah.
Tough to lose the last game against Miami. That they very clearly a better team, but dropped that one. So
either of those Miami games to win one of those, and it would have been 11-6.
Absolutely. The first one that was a win. They were a better team that day.
Yeah.
They just didn't show up for the second one. So tough day overall. Or tough year for the record predictions. Our best predictor was 500. So not great.
Let's go. Hey, I mean, it is kind of tough though when you look at like some of the numbers there, and especially like the Harris stuff is interesting because he did miss a few games. He left the game early. I think he left 2 games early. So it's like, you're not 100% sure we're going to get there. And then of course, the interceptions and the touchdowns and some of those things are just kind of like challenging. Mac, for me, the 3,800 I thought was a no-brainer because 3,400 was 200 yards a game. I'm like, he can average 200 yards a game.
Yeah.
So, and he didn't break it by much. Only had 3,800, but still, yeah, well, that was fun. Well, I think next year we're gonna have to do something like that, and then we're gonna have to like put some sort of bet on it because we didn't do anything this year. We didn't say anything this year. We just kind of like did it, and then
believe
said, whatever.
For the record predictions, we did do, or what was it? I think it was Mac Jones's first touchdown pass. It was going to be round of drinks in Houston, but that never ended up happening.
That's right. Did not happen. That's true.
It's tough. We forgot about it.
Yeah, not great. So, but that's okay. So we'll have to do that next year when we go to wherever we go to.
For sure.
Hopefully,
it's a great schedule. We can talk about that too.
Yes.
Great road schedule for the Patriots. I can pull that up.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome. So I know that they're in, and we'll go through the whole list, but I know they're in Vegas. I know they're in Minnesota. I know they're in Green Bay. Obviously, they're playing the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bills. And I believe that they are. I think they're playing the North, the AFC North this year.
For you right here.
I think is it Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it is. So it's home games are Buffalo, Miami, New York, Baltimore, Chicago, Cincinnati, Detroit, and Indianapolis. And then away games, Buffalo, Miami, New York, Arizona Cardinals, Cleveland Browns, Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings, Las Vegas Raiders, and Pittsburgh Steelers. So Cleveland, no one wants to go to Cleveland. I think that's obvious. Miami, you get that every year. It's a hell of a place to go. New York's really New Jersey. No one wants to go there. No one wants to go to Buffalo. Arizona, hell of a place to go. Green Bay, the history, like who wouldn't want to go there? Minnesota, I hear, is a hell of a time. That when they did the Super Bowl here a few years ago, everybody loved it. People said it was
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one, Las Vegas. Like,
I mean, it's Vegas.
Hell of a trip.
Sakes, you know what I mean? Here's what I'll say. If you're planning a trip this year, which my plan is to go to an away game every year if I can. If you're planning a trip this year, I think you have to go to either Green Bay or Minnesota. That has to be the two choices. And the reason why for me is because they don't play there. Now, they're playing in Arizona, but that's like the extra game this year. They're not playing the NFC West. So they'll be back in Arizona at some point, like not in the near future, but in the next few years.
I think it's 2 years.
Right. So you don't go to Green Bay or Minnesota for 8 more seasons. You have to wait 8 years to see the Patriots play in either Green Bay or Minnesota again. So that, to me, that's the spot for me that I want to go is one of those two, because it's like, hey, we're not, and of course, like, I guess if Vegas ends up being like a crazy weekend, it would be like, oh, I mean, that's a good weekend to go. Right. So, as a teacher, I mean, I always look at that stuff. Like if they're playing in Green Bay on a Monday night, well, it's like, I can't do that. That's not going to work. So, you kind of work on the schedule that you have. But again, it's like, I look at it almost like Vegas, like you'll get a chance in a few years to go to Vegas again. Like, Arizona, you get a chance in 2 years, like you said, to go to Arizona again. Unless you like really want to go to Arizona, to me, it's like Lambeau is the spot, man. That's like Mecca.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, but anyways, that should be a lot of fun. So, all right. So what are you, just to get into the draft a little bit, we don't want to spend too much time on it.
Right.
What do you want? Like, what do you think the Patriots should attack? Just position wise, you don't have to talk about any specific players, but position wise, what do you think they should do, and what do you think they will do?
So those are two different questions.
Yes, they definitely are. Yep.
Big. I think the way the draft is shaping up, you can avoid an early linebacker. Like, I think the number one issue they need to address is getting faster on defense, getting, more athletic. And you think linebacker right away, middle of the defense, get athletic, get a little bit, maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit faster. But they've got guys in the system, like I mentioned earlier, with Rayquan Mcmillan, I'm blank, Cam McGrone, right? Yep. Both guys are. Cameron McGrone is an unbelievable athlete. That's what he's known for. And he's also, I said last year, he's a little bit tapped. Like, he likes to just use his face to hit people, which is awesome. It's great to watch. Yeah. And Rayquan McMillan, he's a veteran. He's coming off an ACL, but that's what he was known for coming out in Miami in those, pre-Brian Flores defenses. That's what he did. He was kind of their sideline to sideline guy. So, and
they do typically say at this point, ACLs are like, nah, they're fine. Like, you're not
6-7 months.
Well, but what I mean is that when you come back from an ACL at nowadays, you're not slower than you were. It doesn't
usually you're faster.
You. Right. Right.
Because you build up all that strength around the ACL and right?
Exactly.
So,
yep.
No, you're absolutely right. So it's not what it used to be. With both guys coming off ACLs, you're not worried if they can play or not. You're kind of just like, can they be back for OTAs?
Correct.
So
if you're not going linebacker, where are you going?
I think they can afford to go offense, which is crazy to think first round. This is what I want, right? Like, what I think they should do. I think offensive tackle is so deep this year that at 21, you can find a really solid. I'm not going to drop any player names because we've got a ton of content coming out, but I'd say the offensive tackle class is about 6 deep in the first round that should go in the first round and that deserve to go in the first round. And then there are 8 to 10 guys in the second and third rounds that, are starter level players, eventually, maybe not right away, but I'd say 6, 7, or 8 offensive linemen are going to be starters day one. So go ahead and get your next franchise tackle because there's a ton of them.
Where did the Chargers draft last year? 17? Was it 17?
17, Rashawn Slater. Yep.
Rashawn Slater, and PFF will tell you he had one of the best rookie seasons by a tackle they've ever seen from anyone. And he was drafted at 17.
Don't forget it.
Yep. He was
Christian Darrisaw went 16. He went 17. Alex Leatherwood.
No. Didn't Darrisaw go? I thought Darrisaw went 23.
Oh, you're right. It was, but Alex Leatherwood went super high. Like,
Leatherwood went 16 or something stupid. The Raiders are just dumb. They're just dumb.
Tough.
So that's crazy. And he's playing guard now. Anyway,
but there are guys that are just like day one step in, and they're the best offensive lineman you have. I'd say there are 2 or 3 of those guys in the draft.
Well, and it's interesting because if that's the case, you can, because you have, and not to get too far into it.
Sewell 7, Slater 13, Leatherwood 17, Darrisaw 23.
Okay, so there you go. So they were 13. They were ahead of the. I thought they were behind the Patriots, but they were ahead of the Patriots. Okay,
so did I.
So, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting for me where you look at it and say, what can they do and who can they get? And if there are guys like that, maybe at 21 you can get one of those guys, right? Maybe only 1 or 2 of them have gone in the top 20. You can trade back a few spots, pick up something else, and still get one of those guys.
And that's to answer the second question where I think they will go. If DeMarvin Leal, who is interior / edge defender, he can really play anywhere on the defensive line. If he falls to them, I think they might. If he falls to them, they might trade back and try to grab him. That's a move that I think he was mocked to go 30th to Tampa Bay. He's the best defensive line prospect in the draft. I know the edge defenders, the like 1 and 2, Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon.
Better than Jordan Davis.
He's the best defensive tackle in the draft. Absolutely.
Oh, I got you.
Jordan Davis is. What does he do? He's 2 gaps
freak.
And he stands in the middle. We've got takes. I've got takes coming up, but DeMarvin Leal he's a guy that the Patriots draft, and he turns into, at the very least, like a Ty Warren type who just plays there for like 8 years and is solid and always does what they need him to do. He's super impressive. And then what I want is Chris Olave.
Oh man, Chris
forever and always until he gets drafted by the Eagles. I want him.
You want Olave. I want John Mechie. And I know you say Mechie doesn't fit here. I don't care. I want him here. What they really need, and they didn't draft Hunter Renfrow. What the hell were they doing not drafting Hunter Renfrow? He went so late. They should have drafted him. They drafted Braxton Berrios, and then let him go to keep some bums. And
Gunnar Olszewski was the guy that they kept over Braxton Berrios.
well, that was a mistake, obviously.
Yes, it was.
And so it's one of those things where, and it's so funny how we've kind of turned on Gunnar a little bit.
I didn't think he was going to make the team last year. I bet literal money that he wasn't going to make the team last year. He was an all-pro returner, and then this year he came back down to earth and was exactly what we all thought he was, which is just an average punt returner.
And he just can't, like, the biggest problem I have with him is the athleticism isn't as good as I thought it was. It's just not. It's not there. So, and he can't catch the ball. So, like, that's an issue.
3 years in, and he hasn't found any sort of time on offense.
That's not good.
Edelman was catching touchdowns his rookie year, and he was contributing. That he's done nothing.
Man, you had the Wally Pipp comparisons. That was 09 preseason.
Yeah,
when he was a rookie. Second game. So right. So that's the stuff for me where it's like he's not, just because he's short and white doesn't mean he's Julian Edelman, right? So
correct.
I'm very concerned about him. They have a void of talent, unfortunately, at the wide receiver. Listen, they need, and this is what I said before, they need 2 more Kendrick Bournes. You don't need anyone. Don't go out and trade for Calvin Ridley. People are talking about trading for Allen Robinson. Don't do that. Don't trade for Allen Robinson. What the hell are you doing?
Allen Robinson's a free agent, baby.
Oh, free agent. Either way, don't sign Allen Robinson. Someone's going to pay him stupid money. Like, he's fine. He's fine. But he's just not, he's not the type of guy you need. You don't need that guy. You need, and was it Scar that said it? Like, Mac Jones needs a whoopee. He does. He needs his whoopee. He needs, Brady had it with Edelman, and he had it with Welker, and he had it with Grunt. Like, he needs a guy that can get open quick and he can get him the ball. Like, that's what you need. Even an Amendola, he didn't even have that. And Myers is fine, and Kendrick Bourne played pretty well, but like, you need a slot guy. And when I say 2 Kendrick Bournes, I don't mean like 2 guys that are Kendrick Bourne. I mean 2 guys at that skill level. So one guy who plays the slot, who's a good slot and can get open quick, but isn't like Cooper Kupp, you know what I mean? But he's good. That's what you need, is a guy like that. And so who knows where you'll find that guy. People talking about Slade Bolden. I wasn't super impressed when I watched Slade Bolden. He's fine.
School, I think.
Is he? He's like a 9th-year senior, isn't he?
He was
at Alabama.
He was a true senior this year, but everybody has an extra year of eligibility because of COVID.
Because of COVID and stuff? Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
I didn't see him declare. He wouldn't be in me and Spags' big board just because it's Slade Bolden. Like, he's a 6th-round pick top.
Right.
But I didn't see if he even declared or not. I don't think he did.
Yeah. But that's what I'm looking for, and I am interested in seeing where they go. I think they need a ton of athleticism. Look, if Nakobe Dean drops to you at 21, like, Jesus Christ, pull the trigger.
He did declare, so I missed that.
All right.
Undrafted free agent Slade Bolden.
Hey, man, I'll take it. Nakobe Dean, if someone like that drops to you at 21 somehow, like, absolutely. We need athleticism, obviously, on the defense. I love the idea of drafting a tackle too, and helping your offensive line. You unfortunately, you spent a ton of money last year. You still have a lot of missing pieces because your drafts in 16, 17, 18, and 19 all aren't very well. 16 was fine. 17, 18, and 19 were all not good to bad. And so now you're paying for it because you're devoid of talent across the board because you drafted N'Keal Harry and Joejuan Williams. Was it the 2016 draft? Yeah, the 2016 draft. 2006. Never mind. Forget it. 2006 draft is one of the worst drafts I've ever seen. I was like, is that 2016? Anyways, but there's so many bad players that they drafted along the way where you're just like, that guy stinks. Like, they don't have anyone in that spot because they drafted 3 guys for it and they all sucked. So that's really where, like, drafting Derek Rivers and drafting guys like that, you just don't have those guys. So now you went out and paid for them in the form of Matthew Judon, and you brought guys in, but like, you drafted Chase. I mean, the first 3 picks in 2019 were N'Keal Harry, Joejuan Williams, and Chase Winovich. All 3 of those guys #stink.
And they got Damian Harris, who's a bell cow.
Yes.
And then it was Jarrett Stidham, he's the 3rd-string quarterback.
Listen, man, I love me some Stiddy.
Waste of a 4th-round pick. Sorry, guys. Yodny Kajust was the pick after that. That 2019 draft class is shaping up to be one of the most disappointing, I would say, because it was so many guys that every time somebody was picked, the analysts were like, "This is such a good value at this spot," and Chase Winovich is an underrated edge defender, but look what he's done. It's just it's not a system fit.
And that's unfortunate. And it's funny because I always go back to I'm like, well, at least they're not the Eagles, right? Where the Eagles drafted. I'll never forget 2019, they drafted Ortega-Whiteside over DK. And then 2020, they drafted Rager. Jalen Rager is so bad.
Who's much worse than N'Keal Harry. I won't let anybody say otherwise.
Oh, yes. They drafted Jalen Rager over Justin Jefferson, which is what in the world are you doing? And so,
had a
that
great
one,
2021 draft.
They did. That's very true. Very That's very true. And they got Jalen Hurts in 2020, which, I love Hurts just from what he did in Alabama. I love the way he's a leader and but I don't know if he's an actual NFL quarterback, but that's a different story for another day. But
right.
But anyways, there's a lot of work to be done. We are going to be doing a ton of stuff. We're going to be doing live mock drafts again. I want to get involved in that. I wasn't involved in enough of those live mock drafts last year, so I'm inserting I'm like one of those. I'm like the dad who just invites himself over. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come over this weekend. You know what I mean?
I think without giving away too much, I think the plan is to have a rotating cast for all of the shows that we'll be doing. Which I feel like is perfect for you because we'll find you a nice position group that you like. And you can just go crazy.
Yes. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. And I think, we're going to try to do more. And listen, it's in the works. I'm telling you right now, we're going to be doing a live stream again for the first. I'll tell you right now, we're doing a live stream again for the first round of the draft. And I'm angling. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm pushing to do a live stream for rounds 2 and 3 as well on Friday night. We'll see. We'll see what people say.
I don't hate it though.
But I mean, listen, there was some interest. People were asking about it, and so I'm like, maybe we'll do it. My wife might divorce me, but whatever, it'll be worth it. So
that, excuse me, but that with the amount of people that we have, that me and Spags have done a lot of the kind of the grunt work.
Yep.
But you know what you're doing. Ryan knows what he's doing. And he's a great host for all of it, and he enjoys doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Brian always has takes. I'll say.
They're not always good, but they're takes.
Taylor's the smartest guy in the room. Mark Schofield's the smartest guy in the world. We've got a lot of people that can contribute. So I'm super excited. I was telling my friends 3-4 weeks ago, I was like, I can't wait for the season to end so I can start draft stuff.
I literally said that to a girl at school. I was like, I can't wait for the draft. And she's like, it's not, the regular season's still going on. I'm like, I know, but this is I love this stuff, man.
It's the best.
It's great. It's great. So anyway, so that's it. We have an action-packed offseason for you guys. A ton of stuff coming through. We're also going to be doing some podcast stuff. So even though all that stuff is live streamed, I want to try to get some of that stuff onto the podcast because although I like the fact that we have the YouTube listeners and we have the Twitch and everything, I love that. I do want to get that onto the podcast as well because we have listeners that listen to just the podcast and they miss out on all that stuff. So I want to try to do that as well. So tons of content for you coming this off season. Thank you for sticking with us this regular season. Year 1 in the books of Mac Jones. Listen, I wrote an article today about Mac. He looked good. He looked good this year. I think there's a lot to look forward to this year. Don't give up on Mac Jones. Don't give up on the Patriots. We found the guy, right? If you had any questions about whether he was the guy or not, he threw a dime to Kendrick Bourne and followed it up by throwing a lead block on a defensive end on a reverse to Kendrick Bourne on back-to-back plays. I don't think there's much else you need to know other than that. The guy lives for this, and I'm very excited to see what he does next year. So I'm all in. I'm all in on Mac Jones. So unlike draft night last year, I'm all in on Mac Jones.
I'm glad to hear it.
So, but anyways, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And like I said, we're taking a few weeks off, but we'll be back somewhere around the Super Bowl, maybe the week before, maybe the week after, and getting deep into the NFL draft. It's gonna be a heck of a lot of fun. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll talk to you soon.